The Last Candle. Japanese Ghost Stories for Sleep. Episode 5. 10 Stories, Told Slowly, by Candlelight. Tonight's 10 stories. The Ghosts of the Great Wave. The Goblin Spider. The Old Woman Who Lost Her Dumpling. The Boy Who Outstayed the Monsters. Kuzunoha, the Fox Mother. The Story of a Tengu. Furisode, the Kimono that Burned a City. Umi-Bozu, the Sea Monk. The Fireball of the Rice Fields, and Grandmother's Footsteps. Good evening. And welcome back to The Last Candle. 59 candles are burning tonight. 40 stories have been told on the nights before this one, and 40 small flames have gone out, one by one, as the old game requires. If you are new here, the rule is old and simple. 100 candles, one story for each, and the 100th story never told, so that the last candle may burn on, and keep us all safe in its glow. Tonight, 10 more tales, of ghosts who walk out of the sea, of a fox who wrote a poem for her son, of a kimono that burned a city, and of a grandmother who came home one last time to touch the hearth. You need not stay awake. The candles will keep count for you. Let us begin. Story 1. The Ghosts of the Great Wave. Our first story tonight is, many say, the most moving tale in all the tales of Tono, a true story, as the people of the coast told it, from the years after the great tsunami of 1896. It is the story of a man named Fukuji, and of what he met one summer night on the misty shore. Fukuji lived in the fishing village of Tanahama, on the northern coast. In the great wave, he lost his wife and one of his children, and he survived, with his 2 remaining little ones, and rebuilt a small hut on the ruins of the old home, because the shore was his living, and grief does not pay for rice. A year passed. And on a moonlit night at the beginning of summer, when the mist lay low on the water, Fukuji rose. The story does not say why, perhaps only that sorrow keeps strange hours, and walked out along the beach, toward the headland. And in the mist, he saw 2 people. A man and a woman, walking together at the edge of the quiet sea, talking low, the way married people talk. And as they came near, Fukuji's heart stopped. The woman was his wife. He called her name, and she turned. And she smiled at him, the same smile, unchanged, and the man beside her, Fukuji now saw, was a young man of the village who had loved her long ago, before her family gave her to Fukuji, a young man who had also died in the wave. And his wife said, gently, in the way one breaks news that cannot be helped, I am married now. To him. Fukuji stood in the mist, a living man among the dead, and said the only thing his heart could find. But do you not love your children? And his wife's face changed, the smile faded, and she began to weep. And Fukuji looked down at his feet, not knowing what more to say, and when he raised his eyes, the 2 of them were already moving away, drifting along the shore toward the headland, growing faint in the mist, and though he ran after them, around the point, there was nothing any more but the moon on the water. He stood there until morning, the story says. And he was ill for a long time after, and then he got up, and went back to his nets, and raised his 2 children, and lived his life. That is the whole of it. Yanagita wrote it down exactly as it was told to him, and would not add one word of explanation, and for 100 years, readers have not been able to forget it. Because it refuses to behave like a ghost story. The dead woman is not angry, and not lost, she is simply living her other life, the one the world never let her live, and the one question that pierces her is the question of her children. The people of the coast did not argue about whether it was real. They had all lost someone to the sea. They understood that the drowned keep house out there, in some village of the mist, and that meeting them again would be exactly, unbearably, like this, familiar, and kind, and already leaving. And perhaps that is the mercy hidden in the tale. Fukuji's wife wept, which means she remembered, which means that love survives even its own ending, out past the headland, in whatever country the wave carried them to. The sea is calm tonight, wherever you are. The mist keeps what it keeps, gently. And the living, like Fukuji, are allowed to sleep, to mend, slowly, and to be loved from farther away than we can see. Rest now. The story of the ghosts of the great wave is told. One more candle goes out. 58 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 2. The Goblin Spider. Our second story is an old campaigner's tale, short, brisk, and satisfying, the way the samurai liked them. It is the story of the Goblin Spider. In old Japan, they say, there were spiders that grew ancient and strange, and when a spider had lived a very long time, it gained the power to change its shape, and to walk as a man walks, and such creatures haunted ruined temples in the lonely hills, where no priest remained to trouble them. There was one such temple, in a wild district, and travelers who sheltered there overnight were found no more. So the people of the villages below knew better than to go near it after sundown, and the temple kept its silence, year after year, in the long grass. Then one autumn there came through the province a wandering samurai, a man who had seen much and feared little, and hearing the villagers' warnings, he did what such men in such stories always do. He borrowed a lamp, thanked them kindly, and went up to spend the night. He sat in the great dusty hall, his sword across his knees, and waited. The moon rose. The wind moved in the long grass outside. And at the deepest hour, there came a sound of soft steps, and a figure appeared in the doorway, an old priest, bent and smiling, who said he lived nearby, and had seen the light, and wondered who visited the poor ruined temple. And the old priest chatted so pleasantly, and offered, at last, to play the samurai a tune on the samisen, to pass the cold hours. He produced the instrument, strange, that, in a ruin, and began to play. And the music was beautiful. Unearthly. The samurai felt his eyelids growing sweet and heavy, and it was exactly then, on the very edge of sleep, that he saw the priest's shadow on the wall. The shadow had 8 legs. The samurai leapt sideways in the same instant that the samisen music turned into something else, a whistling, whipping sound, and where he had been sitting, strands of gray cord thick as rope cracked against the floorboards. The old priest was gone. In his place crouched a spider the size of an ox, its eyes like a row of lanterns, and the beautiful samisen, the samurai saw now, had been nothing but a bundle of spider silk all along. He struck once, as it lunged, a good, deep, two-handed cut, and the great spider shrieked like tearing silk and fled, wounded, through a hole in the temple floor. In the morning the villagers came up, amazed to find him living. Together they followed the black blood, down under the floor, to a pit beneath the foundations, and there they found the goblin spider, dead of its wound, in the middle of its dreadful larder. And I will spare you the inventory, save for this: several of the missing travelers were found alive, bound in silk, sleeping the sweet drugged sleep of the samisen music, and they were cut loose, and carried down the hill, and woke in their own beds, remembering only a tune. The temple was cleansed and reconsecrated, and stands, they say, to this day, and the district made rather a hero of the samurai, who accepted a good dinner and left the next morning, because that is also how such men in such stories always behave. The old nursemaids who told this tale at bedtime always ended it the same way, and their ending has a wink in it that suits our purposes tonight. Beware, they would say, of music that makes you too sleepy, too fast, unless, of course, you are already safe in your own bed, in which case, sleep is the entire point, and no spider anywhere is playing it. Your room has been checked. The shadows in it have the correct number of legs. Let the heaviness come honestly tonight, and sleep. The story of the goblin spider is told. One more candle goes out. 57 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 3. The Old Woman Who Lost Her Dumpling. Our third story is the silliest and sweetest in Hearn's whole collection, a nursery tale about an old woman, a runaway dumpling, and the one weapon that works on demons. It is the story of the old woman who lost her dumpling. There was once a funny old woman who liked two things above all else in the world: making dumplings of rice flour, and laughing. She laughed at everything, this old woman, at good luck and bad alike, which, keep in mind, is the whole secret of the story. One day, as she was making dumplings, one of them slipped off her tray, rolled across the floor, and dropped into a crack in the earthen kitchen floor. The old woman, who was not going to lose a perfectly good dumpling, reached in after it, and the earth gave way, and down she tumbled, a long, soft, sliding way, into a country underneath the world. She picked herself up, quite unhurt, and looked about. There was a road, and rice fields, and stone Jizo statues standing along the way, just as in the world above. And her dumpling was rolling merrily ahead of her down the road. "My dumpling!" cried the old woman, and trotted after it, laughing at the absurdity of everything. Each Jizo she passed warned her kindly, "Old woman, do not go further, a wicked Oni lives down this road." And the old woman thanked each statue politely, and kept trotting after her dumpling, because it was her dumpling, and because she had never in her life been sensible when laughing would do instead. And so, of course, she ran straight into the Oni, a great horned demon who took one look at her and, rather than eating her, had a better idea. "You laugh too much to eat," he said. "Come and cook for me." And he carried her over the river, to his house, and set her to work, and gave her a magic wooden rice paddle. 1 grain of rice, stirred with this paddle, would fill the whole pot. And here the tale settles into its warm middle, for the old woman lived in the Oni's house a long while, cooking mountains of rice from single grains, and was not much mistreated, and laughed all day at the wonderful paddle, but she missed her own little kitchen, and the sunlight, and dumplings made her own way. So one day, when the Oni was out, she took the magic paddle, tucked it in her belt, and ran for the river, where a boat was tied. She was halfway across when the Oni came home, and roared, and came down to the bank with his friends. And here is the famous part, which Japanese children have shouted along with for 100 years, the Oni could not swim. So instead, they knelt at the bank, and began to drink the river. And the water fell, and the boat began to ground on the mud, and the demons waded out, grinning, their bellies swollen up like festival lanterns full of an entire river. The old woman looked at them, enormous, dripping, ridiculous, ready to gulp her down as dessert after a river, and she did the single most dangerous thing you can do to a demon whose belly is full of water. She made a face at them, and laughed. And the Oni, all of them, burst out laughing too. They could not help it. And the moment they laughed, out came the river. All of it, in one colossal, undignified whoosh, and the boat lifted, and the current caught it, and away went the old woman, cackling, paddle in her belt, while the empty Oni sat down hard in the mud and laughed until they cried, because even demons know a good exit when they see one. She reached home safely, of course. And with the magic paddle she made rice and dumplings without end, fed every neighbor, grew comfortably rich, and laughed, the story insists, every single day of a very long life. The old teller said this tale teaches that laughter defeats what strength cannot. And so it does. But tonight notice the smaller lesson tucked inside it, made just for the sleepless. The old woman never once worried. Down a hole, into a demon's kitchen, aground in a drying river, she treated every disaster as a curiosity, and every curiosity as a joke, and the world, disarmed, let her pass. Whatever rolled away from you today, it will keep till morning, or it was only a dumpling. Smile at the dark once, for practice, and sleep. The story of the old woman who lost her dumpling is told. One more candle goes out. 56 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 4. The Boy Who Outstayed the Monsters. Our fourth story comes from one of the strangest documents of old Japan, the Ino Mononoke Roku, the Monster Scrolls of Ino, which record, day by day, what happened to a 16-year-old boy in the town of Miyoshi, in the summer of 1749, when the monsters came to his house, and stayed for 30 days. The boy's name was Ino Hitaro. He was a samurai's son, newly the head of his small household, and the trouble began, as trouble does, with a dare. He and a friend climbed the local haunted hill by night, to test their courage at the old mound on its top. Nothing happened. They laughed, and went home. And a few nights later, it began. On the first night, as Haitaro sat reading, the room grew heavy, and a thing like an enormous hairy hand pressed slowly down upon the whole house, as if to smother it. Haitaro looked up from his book, observed the phenomenon, and went back to reading. This, you will find, is the entire method of the story. Every night for 30 nights, the monsters came, and every night, something different. A woman's severed head that floated through the rooms, grinning. Haitaro used it as a pillow, and reported it comfortable. A goblin that turned the whole floor into squirming, something. Haitaro walked across it to bed, remarking that it tickled. Stones rained inside the house. The furniture danced. Faces bloomed out of the walls like mushrooms and jabbered at him. The kettle sang with a human voice. Nothing in the house could be relied upon to stay itself, except the boy. He did not flee. He did not fight, there was never anything to strike that stayed struck. He simply declined to be impressed. He ate his meals among horrors. He slept, pointedly, in the middle of the uproar. When a monstrous old woman's face, huge as a room, pressed against the garden shutters one night, Haitaro is recorded to have opened the shutters, looked at her for a while, and closed them again, because the draft was cold. The neighbors, of course, knew everything. In a small town the monsters next door are not a secret. Friends offered to stay over, most lasted one night. Priests offered exorcisms, Haitaro, politely, declined. Some deep stubbornness in the boy had decided that this was a contest, and that a contest is lost the moment you admit it matters. And on the 30th night, the monsters gave up. That night there appeared to Haitaro, seated formally in his room, a figure in the dress of a gentleman, who introduced himself as Sanmoto Goro, a chief, he said, of the goblins of Japan. And the goblin chief bowed to the boy, and spoke, the scroll's record, with great courtesy. For 30 nights we have tried you with every terror at our command, and you have treated us like weather. In 80 years of this work, I have not met your equal. We will trouble this house no more. And as a token, a receipt of surrender, if you like, the goblin chief left with him a small wooden mallet, and instructions that it would ward off any lesser monster who forgot the ruling, and the whole company of horrors departed, in an orderly fashion, and never came back. The remarkable thing is that this is not told as a folktale. The scrolls name the boy, the town, the month, the neighbors. Haitaro grew up, served his clan, and confirmed the story all his life with the mild embarrassment of a man who did one famous thing young, and the little mallet was preserved in a temple, where the curious could see it. In Miyoshi they will still show you where the house stood. The town has adopted the monsters as its patrons. In the affectionate Japanese way, it holds a monster festival to this day. The old scrolls never explain why terror is defeated by boredom, but every child who has waited out a dark bedroom knows. Fear feeds on attention. Starve it for 30 nights, and it will bow, introduce itself, and leave a receipt. So if the small hours bring you any visitors tonight, a creak, a shadow, a worry with a grinning face, you have the Eno method, tested in the summer of 1749, observe it, decline to be impressed, and go back to your book. By morning, everything in the room will have remembered how to be furniture. Sleep well. The story of the boy who outstayed the monsters is told. One more candle goes out. 55 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 5. Kuzunoha, the Fox Mother. Our fifth story is one of the most beloved legends of Japan, the story of Kuzunoha, the white fox who became a wife and a mother, and of the poem she left on a door. The great puppet theaters of Osaka performed it for centuries, and it is performed still. 1,000 years ago, in the province of Izumi, there lived a young nobleman named Abe no Yasuna. Walking one day near the shrine woods of Shinoda, he came upon a hunting party pursuing a white fox, a sacred animal, a messenger of the rice god Inari, and Yasuna, who had a soft heart and quick fists, fought off the hunters and set the fox free, taking a wound for his trouble. He was binding his hurts when a young woman came down the path, graceful and kind, with something quick and amber in her eyes. Her name, she said, was Kuzunoha. She dressed his wounds, and walked him home, and came back the next day to change the bandages, and, in the fullness of time, as the tellers say, they were married, and a son was born to them, a bright, strange, beautiful boy they named Saimai. For 5 years they were happy. And if Kuzunoha sometimes stood very still at the window when the autumn wind moved the leaves, if the household dog would never quite settle in her presence, if her shadow at certain angles seemed to have too fine a tail. Yasuna loved her, and love does not audit. Then one autumn afternoon, Kuzunoha sat in the garden, gazing at the chrysanthemums, and forgot herself. Perhaps she drowsed. Perhaps the beauty of the flowers loosened her hold. However it was, for one unguarded moment, her true shape showed, the white fox, sitting in a woman's robes among the flowers, and her little son, playing nearby, looked up and saw. He was not afraid, he was 5, and she was his mother, whatever her shape. But Kuzunoha knew the law of such marriages, old as the mountains, a fox wife may stay only while her secret keeps. Once seen, she must return to the wild. There is no appeal. So that evening she did not weep where anyone could watch. She put her son to bed. She set the house in order, every corner of it, the way you do when you love a place you are leaving. And at the door, because she could not bring herself to go silently, she took a brush, and wrote upon the sliding screen a single poem. It is, perhaps, the most famous farewell in Japanese folklore. Koishiku ba, Tazunkaite mayo. Izumi neru. Shinoda no mori no. Uremi Kuzunoha. If you love me, if you miss me, come and seek me, in the forest of Shinoda in Izumi, where the kuzu leaves rustle with my regret. And she was gone, a white shape flowing over the garden wall, into the autumn dark. In the morning, Yasuna found the poem, and understood everything at once, the hunt, the wound, the woman on the path. He took his small son by the hand, and they went together to the woods of Shinoda, and there, among the trees, the white fox came out to them, unafraid, and for 1 hour, the tellers say, she was a woman again, holding her boy, saying what mothers say. She could not return, the law is the law. But she gave her son her farewell gifts, a crystal ball, and a golden box, and something better than either, folded invisibly inside him, her fox sight, the gift of seeing what is hidden. Then she was white, and four-footed, and gone among the trees, and the leaves rustled a long time after. And the boy? The boy grew up to be Ep.5, the greatest diviner and master of the mystic arts Japan has ever known, astrologer to emperors, seer of demons, a man whose shrine in Kyoto is crowded with visitors to this very day. All his long life, when asked the source of his uncanny sight, the answer was already famous: his mother was the fox of Shinoda Wood. The Japanese have never told this as a sad story, quite. A mother who must leave is still a mother, the gifts she folds into her children go with them everywhere, and the forest of Shinoda is, after all, a real place, where anyone missing anyone may stand among the kuzu leaves and listen. Whoever loved you into being what you are, near or far, seen or hidden, their gift is still folded inside you, working quietly, like fox sight. Carry it into your dreams tonight, and sleep. The story of Kuzunoha, the fox mother, is told. One more candle goes out. 54 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 6. The Story of a Tengu. Our sixth story is about a Tengu, one of the winged mountain goblins of Japan, and about a kindness that was repaid with a single, impossible favor. Hearn found it in an old Buddhist book, and kept its strange, luminous ending exactly as he found it. In the days of the Emperor Go-Ryuzei, there was a holy priest in Kyoto who went one day into the hills, and came upon a group of boys tormenting a kite, the bird, that is, which they had snared with a line. The priest, being a priest, traded them his fan for the poor creature, and set it free, and thought no more of it. But on his way home, in a lonely place, a strange man stepped out of a bamboo grove and bowed to him, a tall man with bright, fierce eyes, and something not quite settled about his shoulders, as if wings were folded there out of sight. "Reverend sir," said the stranger, "you saved my life this morning, for I was that kite. I am, as you now perceive, a Tengu. And I wish to repay you. Ask me for anything." Now mark what the priest did not ask for: gold, long life, rank, the usual traps. He thought a long while, and then he said, humbly, "I have only one desire, and it is beyond anyone's power to grant. All my life I have grieved that I was born too late to hear the Buddha preach on the holy mountain, in India, 2000 years ago. If such a thing could be seen, that is the only thing I have ever wanted." And the Tengu did not say it was impossible. He looked at the priest a long moment, and said, "That can be shown to you. For we Tengu keep the memory of all we have seen, and my people are old, old enough. Come to the pine grove tomorrow. But one condition, upon your life: whatever you see, whatever you feel, you must not speak. Not one word. Not one cry. Watch in silence, or the vision breaks, and the breaking will not be gentle." The priest agreed. And the next day, in the pine grove, the world folded back. And he was there. On the Vulture Peak, in India, 2,000 years deep in time, and it was no dream, or no mere dream, the great assembly spread down the mountainside, monks and kings and animals and beings of light, rank upon rank in the golden air, and at the center, radiant, the Buddha himself, preaching the law, his voice like slow thunder made entirely of gentleness. The priest heard the very words. He saw the flowers fall out of heaven, as the old sutras describe. He saw it all, precisely as Scripture had promised and his whole life had longed for. And that was the trouble. It was everything he had ever wanted, and no heart as devout as his could hold it silently. Before he knew he had opened his mouth, the tears running down his face, the priest cried out in worship, one single, ecstatic cry of praise. And the mountain, the assembly, the golden air, the falling flowers, vanished, like a reflection when the water is struck. He was in the pine grove, in the cold afternoon, and before him stood the Tengu, holding one wing, wincing, for the breaking of such a vision, it seems, falls upon its maker. You were warned, said the Tengu, but there was no anger in it. Only rue, and something almost like respect. It was worth a broken wing, perhaps, to hear a man weep so, at the mere memory of the law. And he bowed, and was a kite again, and rose over the pines, and was gone. The old Buddhist author who first set this down drew a stern little moral about keeping one's promises, but Hearn, and most readers since, have loved the story for the opposite reason. Of course the priest cried out. He was shown the one sight his soul was built around, and his soul did what souls do. Some silences are simply beyond the equipment. And notice the Tengu's arithmetic, one small kindness on a hillside, repaid with 2,000 years, a broken wing, and no regret. Kindness, in these old tales, is always repaid at a wild and unaccountable rate of exchange. That has not changed, the storytellers would insist, only the wings are better hidden now. So sleep, and if you are granted any visions tonight, you are under no vow of silence, cry out, weep, laugh, dreams are sturdier than Tengu magic, and yours will simply fold themselves into morning. Whatever you have longed for longest, may you glimpse at least the mountainside. Sleep well. The story of a Tengu is told. One more candle goes out. 53 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 7. Furisode, the kimono that burned a city. Our seventh story is a legend of old Edo, the story the townspeople told about the most terrible night in their city's history. It is called, simply, Furisode, the long-sleeved kimono. About 250 years ago, so the legend runs, a merchant's daughter of Edo, at a temple festival, glimpsed across the crowd a young samurai of such beauty that her heart went out of her keeping in a single look. She never learned his name. She saw him for a minute, perhaps, the crowd moved, he was gone. But she could not forget him. And in the way of lovesick girls of that age, she did what she could. She had made for herself a splendid furisode, a long-sleeved kimono of purple silk, of the kind young men of rank then wore, bearing the crest she remembered from his garments. And she wore it in her room, alone, and prayed to meet him again, and pined, as the old word has it, precisely and fatally, she sickened, faded, and died, still dreaming of the face from the festival. Her grieving parents gave the beautiful kimono to the parish temple, as was the custom with the robes of the dead, and the temple, as was also the custom, in time sold it. It was bought for another young girl, about the same age. And within the year, she too sickened, dreaming, it was whispered, of a beautiful young man whose face she could not place, and died. And the kimono came back to the temple, and was sold again. And the third girl died. And it came back, and was sold, and the fourth girl died, dreaming the same dream. By now the whole quarter knew the purple Furisode, and crossed the street from it, and the priests of the temple, no fools, decided the thing must burn. So on the 18th day of the first month of the year Mairiki III, 1657, by our counting, the priests kindled a fire in the temple court, and with proper prayers, committed the kimono to the flames. And the silk caught, and rose, and as the burning sleeve went up, a great wind came, as if it had been waiting, and carried the blazing cloth onto the temple roof. The temple caught. The wind rose higher. The quarter caught. And the fire that began with one girl's longing ran before the wind into the wooden heart of the greatest city in the world. They call it the Mairiki fire, or the Furisode fire, to this day. It burned for 3 days. It took the shogun's castle tower, and hundreds of streets, and, the old chronicles say, 100,000 souls. Edo, when the wind finally dropped, had to be built again almost from the beginning. All of it, said the legend, from one purple kimono, from one unmet love, for times buried and never once extinguished. Now, the historians will tell you, correctly, that great fires need only dry wood and wind, and that the legend grew up after, as legends do, because 100,000 deaths demand a story the heart can hold. But notice what story Edo chose. Not carelessness, not wrath, but longing. The city looked at its own ashes and said, "This is what unspent love can do, if it is never given anywhere to go." The Japanese have always kept a wary respect for feelings sealed away too long. The old books are full of them, humming in boxes and sleeves and letters like banked coals. Say the thing, the tales keep advising, give the longing somewhere to live, do not fold it in silk and pass it down. Whatever is folded away in your own keeping tonight, it needs no bonfire, a word tomorrow, a letter, a kindness, will vent it safely. The wind is calm, the roofs are wet, and nothing in your closet is dreaming. Sleep well. The story of Furisode, the kimono that burned the city, is told. One more candle goes out. 52 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 8. Umi-Bozu, the Sea Monk. Our eighth story belongs to the sailors, to the coasting crews of old Japan, who carried rice and timber along the dark shores at night, and who knew that the sea keeps a population of its own. This is the story of Umi-Bozu, the Sea Monk. Ask an old Edo sailor what the Umi-Bozu was, and he would first look at the weather, and then tell you, quietly. On calm nights, he would say, always calm nights, that is the mark of it, the sea would suddenly go still. Too still. The wind would die as if a door had closed. And then, from the flat black water beside the ship, something would rise. A head. A vast, smooth, black head, round and hairless as a monk's, hence the name, rising silently, higher than the mast, with two great eyes that caught the starlight. No mouth that anyone ever agreed on. No sound. It did not roar, or thrash, or overturn the ship by force. It simply rose, and looked at you, and waited. And the wisdom of the coast, handed from captain to boy for 300 years, was this: do not speak to it. Do not scream. Above all, do not answer it, if a voice in your head seems to be asked anything. The crews that panicked, that cried out, that tried to fight or flee, those were the ships found floating empty. But the crews that bowed their heads and went silently about their work, as if the enormous visitor were simply weather, the Umi-Bozu would watch them a while, and sink slowly back, and the wind would return. Some tellings add one detail more, and it is the best of them. Sometimes, they say, the sea monk would ask for a barrel, holding out from the water something like a vast dark hand. And the wise captain would give it one, but a barrel with no bottom. And the Umi-Bozu would take it, and begin to ladle the sea into the ship to sink her, and the water would run straight through, and the great creature, unhurried and unoffended, would ladle on until dawn touched the water, and then sink away, perhaps still puzzling over the arithmetic. You may hear in that the same music as the old woman and her laughing demons. The Japanese sea tales love to defeat the monstrous not with harpoons but with composure, and a certain dry practicality. The sea is vast and strange, they say, you cannot fight it, but you can decline to panic, and you can carry a bottomless barrel, just in case. What was it, the Umi-Bozu? The scholars offer their guesses: a whale's back rising in starlight, a waterspout on a windless night, the shadow of a squall, the loneliness of men, months from home, on black water at the hour when the mind makes faces of everything. The sailors themselves did not much care. Whatever rises from the deep and looks at you, they reasoned, is real enough while it is looking. But here is the thing worth keeping, and the reason this tale belongs to a sleep channel and not a storm warning. In all the hundreds of tellings, along all the coasts of Japan, the Umi-Bozu never harmed a quiet crew. Never once. The stories are unanimous. It rose for the panicked, the shouting, the flailing, and for the calm. It was only a great dark head against the stars, watching a while, and gone. The old captains made the lesson explicit for their boys, and we may borrow it whole. Most of what rises up enormous in the night is not asking for battle. It is only asking whether you will panic. Answer no. Keep your hands on your own small work, and it sinks away of its own accord, every time, before morning. Your ship is your bed, and the sea tonight is flat calm. If anything vast and quiet rises in the dark of your mind, let it look, bow your head, continue breathing, which is your work, and it will sink away. The wind will come back by morning. It always does. Sleep well. The story of Umi-Bozu, the sea monk, is told. One more candle goes out. 51 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 9. The Fireball of the Rice Fields. Our ninth story returns to the valleys of Tono, for one of its small, strange, glowing entries, the kind of tale a farmer tells in 20 words, and a listener carries for 20 years. It concerns the lights that walk the rice fields at night. The people of Tono knew many kinds of night fire. There was Kitsunbai, the fox fire, long chains of small flames moving along the ridges where no road ran, which the old people said were fox wedding processions, and which it was polite not to stare at. There were the Hitodama, the soul lights, small pale fires that drifted from a house where someone lay dying, making their quiet way toward the temple, arriving, the priests confirmed, a little before the news did. And then there were the greater fires, which had no name and needed none, and this is the tale of one of them. A man of the Tono country. Yanagita gives his village and his family, in the flat way of the tales, was coming home late across the rice fields in the season when the paddies stand full of water. The night was moonless. And out on the black mirror of the fields, he saw a great ball of light, big as a lantern festival lantern, or bigger, drifting slowly above the water, this way and that, unhurried, like something looking for a dropped coin. Another man would have taken the long way home. But this man, the tale notes with quiet approval, had drunk a little, and drink, in the tales of Tono, serves the same office as courage and is more honestly come by. So he walked out along the paddy dikes, straight toward the light, to see what it was. And the light, seeing him come, waited for him. When he was close enough, he said afterward, to warm his hands at it, though it gave no heat, the great fireball rose, gently, to the height of a man's face, and hung there before him, pulsing softly, the way a jellyfish swims. And the man, hands at his sides, standing on the narrow dike between the black water and the black sky, looked into it, and reported, ever afterward, to anyone who asked, exactly what he saw there. Nothing. Nothing at all, and that was the wonder of it. No face, no figure, no message, only light, pure and deep and quiet, going down and down into itself like a well of it, and a feeling, he said, that he could not put into words, except that it was not fear, and that he would not have traded the standing there for a good horse. They regarded each other, the man and the light, for the space of 100 heartbeats. Then the fireball sank slowly back to its height above the water, and resumed its unhurried drifting, and the man walked home along the dikes, and told his household, and was not believed until the next season, when 2 others saw it too, in the same fields, behaving in the same courteous way. It never harmed anyone. It never meant anything, so far as the village could discover. It was simply there, some moonless nights, keeping its own counsel above the water, and Tono, in its wisdom, let it be. The children were told, if you meet the light, bow to it, and go your way. And the light, presumably, was told something similar about the children. Yanagita set down dozens of these small luminous encounters, and the scholars have never quite known what to file them under, not ghosts, not gods, not warnings. Perhaps the truest label is the one the old farmer gave when pressed for an explanation, which Yanagita recorded, and we may end on. The night is large, he said, and we are not the only ones awake in it. And that, tonight, is a comfortable thought rather than a fearful one. The night is large, and full of quiet, courteous lights going about their own unknowable errands, none of which concern you. Bow to them from your pillow, if you like, and go your way, which leads into sleep. Rest well. The story of the fireball of the rice fields is told. One more candle goes out. 50 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 10. Grandmother's Footsteps. Our last story tonight is the 22nd tale of the Tono collection, and many readers, over 100 years, have called it the most perfect ghost story ever set down. It is very short. It is about a grandmother, and it will send us to sleep the way the old houses of the north went to sleep, with the fire banked, and the family gathered, and the doors unlocked between the living and the dead. The tale was told to Yanagita by Sasaki Kizun, the young man of Tono who gave him most of the tales, and it happened, Sasaki said plainly, in his own family's house, on the night of his great-grandmother's wake. The old woman had died full of years, and the household had done all the proper things. The body lay in the inner room. The relatives had gathered from the valleys, and, as was the custom of that country, the women of the family, daughters, granddaughters, slept that night together in the room by the hearth, keeping the fire alive through the wake. In those houses the hearth fire was never let die on such a night, it lit the dead one's way. In the deep of the night, the young Sasaki, a boy then, lay half awake among the sleeping family. The fire had burned down to its quiet red heart. And in that stillness, he heard footsteps. They came from the back door, the door the dead woman had used all her life, in from the garden. Soft, unhurried steps, crossing the wooden floor, and the boy knew them. Everyone in that house would have known them anywhere, the particular shuffle of his great-grandmother's walk, stooped with age, her feet never quite leaving the boards. She came along the edge of the hearth room where the women slept. And as she passed the round charcoal basket, the hem of her kimono brushed against it, and the basket, which was of woven cane, turned slowly, rasping, on the floorboards. The boy saw it turn. That was the detail Sasaki would repeat all his life, and the detail Yanagita would not soften, not a vision, not a glow, a cane basket, actually turning, pushed by the hem of a dead woman's dress. She went on, with her small shuffling steps, into the inner room, where her body lay, and the footsteps ceased. And in the hearth room, one of the sleeping women, a granddaughter, cried out suddenly in her sleep, a single sharp cry, and everyone woke. And the house sat up together in the ember light, hearts loud, listening, and heard nothing more. Only the fire settling, and the wind under the eaves, and the enormous, ordinary silence of a house at night. That is the whole story. No message was delivered. Nothing was demanded, or warned, or wanted. An old woman, on her last night above ground, walked once more through the house she had kept for 60 years, in at her own door, past her own fire, brushing her own basket, and lay back down. Yanagita placed this tale near the front of his book, and scholars have argued ever since that the whole meaning of the tales of Tono is folded inside it. The dead of that country do not haunt, they belong. They come and go in the houses they built, on errands of their own, with the perfect familiarity of ownership, and the living, waking in the ember light, are frightened for a moment, and then, in some deep old way, comforted. She still knows the way in, the house was saying. She still counts this as home. In Tono they will tell you the custom that grew from such nights. When an old one of the family dies, you do not tidy away their chair too quickly, you leave their door unbolted the first night, and if, in the small hours, the house creaks in a familiar rhythm, you say quietly, "Okiri nasai," welcome home, and go back to sleep. So we will end our 50 stories exactly there, at the banked fire, among the sleeping family, with the beloved footsteps fading and the basket gently turning. If your own house creaks tonight, let it be somebody who loved the place, making one last fond round of the rooms, finding the fire banked, the children grown, everything, at last, in order. Everything is in order. The doors are shut, the flame is low, the count is kept. Okiri nasai, and oyasumi nasai. Sleep well. The story of grandmother's footsteps is told. The last of tonight's candles goes out. 49 remain, waiting for another night. And so 10 more candles have gone out, and 49 remain, glowing softly in the dark. We have passed the halfway mark of our 100 nights, you and I. The sea has taken back its ghosts, gently. The fox has finished her poem. And the grandmother's footsteps have faded down the hall, content that the fire was banked and the children were sleeping. We never tell the 100th story. The last candle is still burning, and it will keep burning, all through the night, for you. The last candle returns every night, with old stories from Japan, some of which the world outside has never heard. But that is for another night. For now, sleep well.